we are back with yet another episode of Holographic Her.
So, since last time you and we spoke, I have been working on a place outside of Spotify for us to meet. Yay! And I'm pretty sure you already know what app I'm talking about, cause it is Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to my podcast yet, it would mean the world to me if you did so. And it's only because of you I'm able to keep on going with this. And if you would like to have some influence on the topics here in the podcast as well, it would be absolutely awesome if you would like to join in on my newly founded Instagram page. I would love to see you there as a fellow fantastic fuck up, contributing with ideas for directions I should go with this podcast. So it's actually a little bit cringe to advertise for myself, both with the podcast and also with my newly founded Instagram page. Especially as we in Scandinavia, we have this unofficial law called the Yande law. Maybe you have heard about it or maybe you haven't, but it's basically a set of rules to keep Scandinavians grounded and make sure that our attitudes are in check. It consists of 10 different sentences, all in different ways, stating how you are not better than anyone else, how you don't know better or more than anyone else, and how you are not important. I would say that you have to take the law with a pinch of salt, or at least use the definition in a way where you allow yourself to be proud of what you have achieved, but still humble enough to admit that you are not the best and never will be. There's always someone out there being better than you, and that's okay, as long as you know that you are amazing anyway. It's more than okay to speak out loud and be proud of how far you have come, but still knowing someone else out there is just as good and incredible as you are. As we agreed on in episode 1, we should all be better at cheerleading. I only have two situations where the Yande law do not count or exist, and I'm not only saying this to cover up how terrible I tend to behave while they are happening, these situations, but also to prepare everyone on how crucial it is to bring your fucking A game to the battlefield of Mario Kart and Uno. Those are both lawless areas, and if you lose, too bad. I will smash my victory in your face. Let me just say, it's really hard to act like a reasonable grown up when playing with younger kids. I grew up as a player too on a stationary keyboard. I can handle anything in life, and so can you. Just like with the Yanda law, some rules exist because they are meant to be bent or broken completely. And did you know that the official Uno rules state that you cannot stack +4 cards upon each other? Bitch, please. Come on, they handed us the game and it's too late now to tame us. And the game is simply not worth playing if no one leaves the room without screaming or crying. Okay, maybe it is a bit extreme, but we do have to enter a conversation of world peace afterwards. Because all of these disagreements only prepare us for the real life out there. And you know what I have found really important regarding disagreements in general? To only choose the fights worth fighting. You have heard it before, and it's okay if you don't agree, but I have never been much of a fighter myself. I have always been a bit of a people pleaser, allowing everyone to step on my toes several times before I started to speak up or disagree. And by the years, when my close friends have seen me in these situations where I clearly should have spoken up, disagreed, or fought back, 95% of the time I just didn't. I just accepted and pulled back. The last 5%, I will get so mad that my face will just show you exactly how I felt without saying anything. I would start to fight like an immature kid, raising my voice. It would be impossible to have a rational conversation with me, and if it was really bad, I would just drop a fucking bomb and leave the room. And with that said, that's exactly what I meant by choosing the fights worth fighting. Just leave. Problem solved. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Of course, it's not what I meant. Let's dive a little bit deeper, shall we? Let's talk about fighting and disagreeing and arguing. I don't know about you, but no one has ever teach me how to fight. In rom-coms, we often see women throwing pumps after a guy, or in Mean Girl, when Katie just starts to purely sabotage Regina by fucking up her life. And apparently, none of the solutions are very good ways to solve fights or disagreements. But what are good ways to handle fights? I can't promise you that I have the solution that suits you, but let me open up Pandora's box and share some of my very worst moments of fighting to show you ways I personally wouldn't handle a fight in the future. So, the very first one goes way, way back to elementary school. And even though kids are expected not to know how to handle a fight in a mature way, I just have to mention this specific situation as it was just a terrible decision all of the girls in my class had made as a union. You know how sport teachers can go one or two ways? They can either be the coolest teacher at school, being praised and loved by everyone, or they are an employee dragged out from hell. That kind of teacher who keeps an eagle eye on you, and no matter how hard you try, it will never be good enough. If you asked us back then, our teacher was option number two. She was terrifying. I remember one day before having sport, we were all changing clothes in the locker room, bitching about our teacher in a way only fifth graders can bitch. I have no idea who came up with the plan, but suddenly the popular girls had decided before we went into class that they would do the exact opposite of everything our teacher said, just to piss her off. I was not one of the popular girls, but me and my group could actually agree on what the popular girls had just said. So, of course, we searched for approval and said yes to contribute in their evil plan. Maybe having the same enemy would make us all become friends. Within the first 10 minutes of the class, our teacher had lost her fucking mind and temper, and I cannot blame her. Now, when I'm an adult myself and think back, we were honestly said a bunch of absolute shitheads. Imagine you're asking someone to do a certain thing and they just do the exact opposite to point out how much they disagree with you. I cannot recommend fighting like this, just being on the opposite, being a brat and being immature. Don't do it, honestly. I wouldn't do it in the future. The only thing you do is pissing people off. A way of fighting that is kind of similar is the strike. And I know from myself that this kind of fight is very common in relationships. At least it was in mine. Um, Still, I will not say that this kind of fighting is the healthiest, but sometimes it can just feel very good to prove a point, right? The fights usually start with someone blaming the opponent. You never help out with the dishes. With never said in caps lock. Or I always do all the chores myself. With always said in caps lock. In my life, these arguments often happened with my boyfriend when one of us got overwhelmed by a contradiction in expectations. The feeling of carrying the whole world on your shoulder and being taken for granted or maybe led aside by your partner can make you feel as if you're led to yourself when you're supposed to be a team. When having a strong need to be heard or to be seen, caps lock words sneak their way into arguments. You always, you never, I'm the only one who, etc., etc., etc. I also feel like these kind of fights happens when you have kept something to yourself and maybe you have avoided a certain conversation and suddenly the bubble of anger just bursts and the overwhelmed feelings takes charge. First of all, this is not healthy. It should definitely be a sign for you to see why do you start these caps lock fights. As an example, if you have a boyfriend who is liking another girl's pictures on Instagram and you start to be really annoyed and start a fight with you always like another girl's picture or you never like my pictures, as an example. It could maybe come from unhealed wounds because your last boyfriend cheated on you. Or maybe you have low self esteem and are way too harsh on yourself comparing your looks to hers. It could also be that you are doing all of the chores at home but you have so many ingrown pattern of nurturing as you were the oldest kids in your family when you grow up, so you took care of your parents and took care of your siblings, and every time he tries to help you out at home, you end up pushing him away without realizing it, and then you get angry when he don't help you. There could be so many unhealed traumas in these fights. But I cannot deny, maybe your partner is a fucking piece of shit and you have been putting up with his unfair behavior for way too long. But then that's something you have to be aware of as well. Said in all seriousness, take a deep breath and look into why you might start to throw around caps lock words. When I have a million things on my mind, I can feel a bit pressured, and I sometimes fall into the trap of nagging and screaming at my mom when she calls me randomly on the phone. Even though she has done nothing to me, she literally just typed in my number on the wrong day at the wrong time. And when I catch myself speaking to her in caps lock, I immediately realize what I'm doing and apologize to her by saying something like, I'm sorry that I'm screaming at you right now. This has nothing to do with you. I am very overwhelmed at the moment and I have a really bad day. I love you. Let's talk another time. And sometimes I don't even realize in the moment that I was acting up unfair. But then it's really important afterwards to be aware of this really bad stomach ache you have. Like, damn, did I really just scream at my mom? She was only calling me to tell me she loved me and wish me a nice, good day. Honestly, that's not okay. And that's why you have to be a grown up and make a phone call right back and apologize for how your feelings ran off with you. By all means, you're not supposed to justify your screaming in the phone call back. You just have to clarify where those feelings came from and make sure that they don't feel attacked by you because they didn't do anything. They should not have been a victim of a one sided caps lock fight. Does it make sense? I really hope so. Okay, I really ended up somewhere completely different than where I intended. Um, we ended up talking about caps lock fighting instead of the strike. The strike and the caps lock fights are often seen stacked together as a nice hamburger. The overcooked, cold, boring hamburger, actually, it's not really nice. Um, Without any melted cheese or pickles. And yes, pickles do belong in cheeseburgers. But the strike is often seen as the execution part of the caps lock fight. As an example, if you are the one who always does all the chores at home, you simply just stop doing them. If your partner doesn't believe how you keep the whole household ecosystem running, he will see the minute the fridge is empty or the dishes are stacked in the sink. It's an exclamation mark to your caps lock fight. You visualize your point. I once tried this move when I was living abroad with three flatmates, and let me just tell you, it's not very fun to pull off this strike when you are fighting about the kitchen and you appreciate a clean antibacterial kitchen. Suddenly you have grease on the countertop for 8 days in a row and the dirty dishes starts to catch flies. Two out of my three flatmates did simply not care about cleaning after themselves at all. Their ignorance led me to the decision that when our lease on the flat ended, I didn't want to renew it. And luckily, they didn't want to renew it either, as they, on the contrary, thought I was a controlling psycho bitch. And yes, I will turn psycho if you let raw chicken lay around in the shared fridge and it having so much slime dripping down on my veggies laying on the shelf underneath. That's fucking disgusting. And yes, whew, then I will go psycho. And I was cooking up so much anger that year I was living with them. Miss Immune to Salmonella 1 and 2 were luckily not my only flatmates, as I mentioned. I also had my third one as well, and she was the one I originally moved in with. The other two girls were just random add ons I didn't know beforehand. The third flatmate is still one of my best friends and soulmates in life, even though it's quite many years ago we lived together. And to give you a little bit of context to the next fighting method I will present to you. The next fighting method is called gravity rage, which occurred for the first time in my life when the lease on our flat had expired. We had to move out in the morning where the cleaning company would arrive to make the flat look as if we had never been living there before. The night before this morning, I had a staff party to attend, so all of my stuff were packed and ready to go. And the same with my third flatmate, let's call her Bubble. Bubble were just chilling out at home, and I went to the staff party. And the upcoming morning, we would all be out and we would never have to see Salmonella 1 and 2 again. Everything was planned, life was good, I thought. But when I got back home, drunk and ready to hit the sheets, I saw that Salmonella 1 and 2 still hadn't packed anything at all. To make it even worse, they were completely gone. They had left the flat with a message to Bubbles saying that they had taken all of their stuff they had claimed to be theirs and left for good. When Bubble told me this, I lost my fucking mind, and it did not help that I had been drinking either. Alcohol do not dim temper, and I normally have a hard time to express real anger. And just like with the Capslock fighting, I ended up bursting, but this time in a physical way, not with my words. We had less than 4 hours to empty all of their fucking stuff from our flat, which, by the way, was a flat in 2 floors. It was huge, and they had left everything, literally. There was books laying around, and clothes, and furnitures, and kitchenwares, and trash, and there was so much crap left behind from these girls. And I literally wanted to cry. No, actually, I did cry in anger. I just wanted to go to bed, but our deposit was on stake, so we had to do something. At first, I started to smash their plastic plates and cups down on the floor and up in the ceiling, just throwing them everywhere around. I would have thrown their porcelain if we didn't have a cat in the house, but it would have been way too irresponsible to do so. So I was throwing around all of their plastic kitchenware, and then I stormed upstairs all together with Bubble to empty Salmonella one's master bedroom. And we came to realize after a few trips up and down the stairs with all the fucking trash that we would never make it in time before the cleaners arrived. So we projected the anger into something effective. We threw all of her stuff out of the window. We did not care whether the stuff broke or not. As she has said, she had nothing left in the flat that was hers. And no, throwing stuff doesn't solve anything, but I must honestly admit it felt very, very good in the moment. And this is what I call gravity raging. Just throwing stuff. And if your fighting language is gravity rage, throwing stuff. I know it feels good in the moment, because I felt good in the moment. But how does it actually solve anything? Think about it. Just for a second. Think about it. You might hurt someone just like I could have been hurting the cat if I had decided to throw glass on the floor. And we don't want to hurt any human beings, and we don't want to hurt animals, especially not animals. You could also end up damaging physical things, and you would really regret afterwards when you have calmed down that these things are now broken. Maybe you have a really beautiful mug that you end up smashing in the floor, and then you don't have a mug anymore. And situations can be really, really messy if you end up breaking someone else's stuff, and they could actually end up hunting you down with a compensation claim. And to put an end to the story, Salmonella 1 and 2 did actually show up in the middle of a gravity raging, and we were not very popular. Moral of the story, think twice before you throw. But whether it's worth fighting like that or not is completely up to you. You just have to be ready to face the possible consequences afterwards. That kind of fighting I grew up with in my household is the silent treatment. And it's absolutely the worst. I hate when you're just getting a cold shoulder without the possibility to talk about what has happened. More specific, in my house, it was the ignorant behavior. My mom was really, really terrible at doing this. She always did it, and it just felt like fucking shit. I have always been someone who needs to express things by words, and if my opponent acts up like a wall, or even worse, a wall that walks away from me while I try to express my hurt, oh, that's the fucking worst. Honestly, come on. What does that good? Nothing. Unfortunately, I do know that it is a survival mechanism to shut down and even walk away, But if we want a healthy fight, this is not how we should go about it. If you're one who tends to walk away, you can, of course. I'm not blocking your emergency exit. But at least do it in the right way then. If you are in a fight with someone and you feel eager to just leave, please, 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 please. I say this from the bottom of my heart as one who really needs to put words into fights. Express your walkout in a respectful way. Do not just storm out like, adios, bitch, and leave them with a one sided fight. It will create a ticking bomb and make the argument even worse when you come back home. And unless you have planned to leave for the airport and never return, don't do this. So, one thing you can do if you have this intense feeling of, I have to leave, you could say something like, I hear you, but I have a really hard time to talk about it right now. I need to pull back for a moment to absorb what you have just said to me. When I have gathered myself a bit, I'm ready to give you my full attention and then we can talk it all out. Such a grown up way to handle it, right? So, if this is you, I highly recommend it. I'm pretty sure it will feel better for you as well that you can actually dim the situation a tiny bit by pulling yourself back and giving yourself some time to think. But you know what's not very grown up? The way I can turn passive aggressive when I'm arguing with authorities. I don't know what my problem is, but I tend to take up fights when I feel mistreated by people in position of power. If I'm disagreeing with, for example, insurance companies or HR people, the board of directors at my workplace, or in general, people who make dumb decisions that only benefits themselves without having any concerns of who they might hurt. And there's always money involved in these situations. See, that pisses me off, and I can't hold back my passive aggressiveness. I love words, and I'm skilled enough to write legendary reviews on companies on Trustpilot. But I can also make them shiver by being their worst nightmare, writing the most terrifying and detailed emails about how they are wrong. If I had to be a superhero, I would be the modern world's Robin Hood, writing the most terrifying and detailed emails about how they are wrong. If my friends or family have problems in general with authorities, you'll see me volunteering straight away. If the situation is major, it just feels good to spend a week or so to write a 10 pages long paragraph PDF file filled with arguments about how they are wrong. Writing passive aggressive emails are my bread and butter in life. But it doesn't mean I'm in the right, and I have managed to improve this fighting technique as well. One of the most important things I have learned by working in hospitality most of my life is that no one likes a Karen. No one. If someone acts up like a Karen, they will be treated like a Karen. And this is important to remember if you're about to start a passive aggressive email or phone call fight. No one likes a Karen, and you need to do better. So, even though I deep in my heart love a good verbal passive aggressive email, I still have to hold myself back by using what I call the puppy eye technique. Hide your anger behind kindness as if you were a puppy. If they then decide to kick you in the face afterwards, they will see you have rabies and they are doomed. To give you an example, a few weeks ago, I went to a restaurant with one of my girlfriends and we had such a great night. Until 24 hours later, my friend turned completely pale and got so sick. She almost threw up for more than a week. We both thought it was an unlucky coincidence until we got an email from the restaurant asking us to fill out a questionnaire for the food authorities, as some guests had reported them. Almost every single guest from that night had gone sick within 24 hours of the visit. Even though we were sitting so close together at this tiny table and we ate all of the same foods and even ate from each other's plates, I didn't catch a single grain of sickness, by the way, which is a big applause to my immune system. The only thing I experienced was that I was a little bit swollen in my face, but that's because I have been eating food I was sensitive to. If you need help to boost your immune system, let me know. I'm a naturopath student. But yeah, I'm Sorry, I'm done showing off. Sorry, back to the story.
We contacted the restaurant asking for a refund due to the consequences of our visit, but they actually denied as they wanted to make sure that the food authorities had their point of view of the whole case before starting to give all of the guests refunds, which is understandable. So, according to them, a guest had been sick and infected all of the other guests in the restaurant. Whether that was true or not, we would see. So we waited and waited and waited and heard absolutely nothing back from them. In the end, I went to the food authorities website myself and found their inspections papers from the investigation of the restaurant. And you know what? They did get a warning, but not because they had been failing on the hygiene. They did everything right according to how to handle food. They washed hands, they used gloves, they did absolutely nothing wrong. The only thing the food authorities had to mention was the door into the guest toilet was open. And this door was just on the opposite side of the kitchen. So they had to give him a warning because of that. After reading the inspection papers on the food authorities website, I actually wrote yet another email to the restaurant where I just said it as it was. Hey, I have just read the inspection papers and we had this really horrible experience while visiting your restaurant. And would it be possible to get a refund? Because my friend, she was sick for more than a week. And we really love your restaurant. The food is amazing, and I really don't hope that we will get into a disagreement about this. Instead of being passive aggressive or directly aggressive, I just kindly invited the owners into a conversation where we could try to meet on the middle. I didn't go crazy, I didn't start a conflict, but I invited to conversation. And I never got a reply to the email, and that actually pissed me off. So I resent the email and being a little bit passive aggressive, saying, "Hi, this is now the third time we are trying to get in touch with you according to this problem." And the manager finally replies to me. She simply haven't seen the email. I don't know why she hadn't replied before, but she ended up calling me, and we had such a nice phone conversation where she in depth told me about the food authorities, how they came by and inspected everything, and that there is a virus going around at the moment, and that was just really fucking bad luck. And she was so kind, and I was friendly towards her and was eager to listen to what she had to say, and we ended up having a really nice conversation, and she thanked me for being so nice and understanding, and I was thanking her for actually taking the time and explaining what actually happened. And even though she wasn't originally allowed to just give paybacks because of a virus, because it could have happened in any restaurant, she ended up paying back half of the amount we paid for our visit. And it was really nice, especially because when she told me it wasn't their fault at all. So, yeah, the situation ended out really, really great. We got a half a refund, and instead of just going crazy, we got exactly what we wanted, some money back. It's a really, really good strategy to use this puppy eye technique where instead of going just 100% aggressive or passive aggressive straight away, then just kindly invite them to meet you on the middle. And it's actually a really good strategy to use the puppy eye technique because you show your best side. You show off as friendly and invite them to conversation and give them the chance to solve the problem without anyone being upset, hopefully. I do the exact same thing when I'm calling companies directly on the phone. Even though I want to go crazy and argue with the poor employee who picks up the phone, I usually conversation like, I know you're just an employee in this company and you have done absolutely nothing wrong to me. So I'm sorry if I'm coming off angry or starts to scream in a bit. But I am very upset. And you know what? The one on the receiving end of this phone call has way more respect for you by addressing how you're screaming isn't directed to them. Just by addressing how you're screaming, isn't directed towards them. It also makes them more willing to help you out. As I said, no one likes a Karen. The immature me loves passive aggressive emails and calls, but if I have to put jokes aside regards that, I do my very best to stay calm, be kind, and not to ruin a poor employee's day by having me raging about something that the company they work for have done wrong to me. So if you end up in a similar fight, I recommend you to start out the conversation by being nice, acknowledging that the one picking up is there to help you. They are just someone who went to work to pay their bills and not with the purpose of being your punching bag. We want to be right, not make innocent people cry. And if they don't want to help you, I cannot hold your hand any longer. What you do from there is completely up to you. Whether you start to scream and shout or go straight to writing some angry emails without any service voice. I'm not judging. I'm just here to throw you better and more meaningful ways to fight. But I don't have all the answers. But fighting and expressing your angry emotions is not something we should suppress. It's important to let all existing feelings be felt and heard. That's why it's important to find good ways to fight and argue. Because we should fight. We should all fight. It's not healthy to keep emotions unsaid or unfelt. It's by arguing we can get to the root of the problem and make adjustments towards an agreement or a solution. And sometimes it is impossible to reach an agreement. Just like, as we mentioned in start, when you play Uno and start fighting with everyone around the table, it's near impossible to solve such fights. And that's where the power of agreeing to disagree appears. Or, directly translated from my language, you'll be right and I'll get some peace. And peace is the ultimate goal when fighting. Last week I had a night out with my brother, and at some point during the night we end up loudly disagreeing about something stupid and something really minor. And we were both on the verge of a fight, literally. But instead we stopped up and said, "What is happening? Time out." I expressed why I had felt mistreated in or arguing. He's studying to become a lawyer, and they are not fun arguing with, just to let you know. But when he explained to me why he said what he said, we actually just found out that we had misunderstood each other. And then we hugged and continued all night in a good mood. Quite often we just misunderstand each other, and one of the most important rules my parents teach me as a kid is never go to bed angry. If I had to make an extended version of that rule, it will be something like never go to bed angry, never suppress your feelings, and never lose the insight of why. Let me say that again. Never go to bed angry, never suppress your feelings, and never lose the insight of why. Okay, guys, let's call that a. I really hope you had a great time today, and maybe, just maybe, you have gained a few ideas on how you can interpret your next fight in a way you will gain way more from than just doing gravity raging or caps lock fighting or passive aggressive emailing. Who knows? Maybe you got inspired. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. And then it will mean the world to me if you would like to hit the subscribe button or maybe go and follow me on my new Instagram page, Failing for Life, and then we can stay in touch. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.